Talking about you got this and you got that, and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know that I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And
Tell you what's not popping.
welcome back to another episode of the Only Friends podcast with me and my interrupting asshole friends.
First ballot Hall of Fame podcast introducer.
That's right.
Fucking dude. Yes. You know why? Because he beat Brady twice. Not once.
First
he
ballot
beat Brady
Hall of Fame
twice.
friends.
You know how many Super Bowl MVPs he has? 2. First ballot.
I apologize to the audience for not flicking on the switch about a half hour ago. You would have really enjoyed this heated debate.
I feel like at one time Guapo's just going to start it, not do the countdown, and like have us speak.
That's
It's
dangerous.
too risky.
This is how we all get canceled.
It's
It's
too-
over.
It's too risky.
Yeah.
It's all
We
over.
all or you?
Huh?
We all or you?
We all.
I don't know.
Burke,
We
why
all.
don't you poll the audience, see if they think Eli Manning is
I already
the
did.
first ballot.
I put a tweet
You
out.
already did.
I apologize to everybody for being 15 minutes late because we had to politely explain to our friend Conrad that Eli Manning is in no way, shape, or form a first ballot Hall of Famer.
You're an idiot. Man has 2 Super Bowls. It's possible.
Yes.
He beat Brady twice.
He did beat
he
Brady
did
twice.
these things.
I mean,
and he'll get into the Hall
If it
eventually.
was up to me,
You know what
I
else?
would
He's
put him
also
in.
a Manning, and that's something in and of
Yeah.
itself. But is he
Yeah.
going to get it on the first drive? Fuck no.
Yeah.
Like it's just
You've got to have a delineator between Peyton and Eli.
yeah. Come on, like you can't put them in the same fucking category.
You could,
I do love Eli for beating Tom Brady twice.
You do kind of say
Holds
they're
a
the
special
same.
little place in my heart for that.
Right. We were happy for them.
Maybe he's a second ballot, you know, that way you
I
can
don't
differentiate.
care. I don't care if he's
First.
second or 10th. He's just not first. Did Peyton win 1 or 2 Super Bowls?
1. No, 2. One with,
One with
he went
Denver
through
and one with
Denver.
Yeah,
He won
yeah.
2.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because like I was kind of in my back of my head hopeful it was 1 because like does that somehow make Eli better all of a sudden?
Sometimes
you know what I mean?
you're so good
That is the dumbest
that
thing
it
you've
doesn't
ever
matter.
said.
It's the Dan Marino argument, right? He's so good and he was so elite that it literally didn't matter whether he won one or not. He was always going to be first ballot,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think
And I think that sort of
Manning-
talent is rare, and
Yeah.
Eli is not that.
Yeah, but he has
Exactly.
2 Super Bowls. 2
Right.
Super Bowl MVPs.
And the 2 Super Bowls,
He came in clutch.
They do help. Like if
Yes.
he doesn't win either one of those Super Bowls,
If he doesn't win 2
he's
of them,
not in the Hall at all.
if he wins 1, he's probably not in the Hall.
I agree.
But if he
Right.
wins 2, he's a first ballot.
No, you're making too big of a jump.
I'm going.
Too big of a jump, right? The
It's so hard to win 2.
Right, you're making too big of a jump. The jump is, does he make the Hall or does he not? The 2 Super Bowls get him into the Hall.
Of course, Brian.
right?
Of course. You're a reasonable person.
I tried.
What if he had 3
Disagree.
Super Bowls?
I don't care if he has 6.
If he had 6, he
Nah,
might be
nah,
first ballot.
nah,
Stop it.
nah,
If he had
you're-
6, he's
you're being
first
an
ballot.
I will say that is kind of the fucked up point. At some point, there is a number
There is a line,
where it's
yes.
like you just won so
Right,
much.
right.
It doesn't even matter if it's in spite of you.
Right.
You just get to get the free ride. Like
Yeah.
the entire decade of the Patriots are probably just all going to
Like everybody thinks Michael Jordan's the best player of all time just because he won 6 championships. But I mean, I can name like 6 people off the top of my head who are better than him.
No, you can't. You can't name one.
I'm joking. Yes, I
saw-
can LeBron James.
I saw a Michael Jordan highlight
Let's go.
reel.
Let's get the arguments going.
I saw, as a young person that has grown up with LeBron, I saw a Michael Jordan highlight reel, and you got to give it to Jordan, man.
Wow, you weren't even
I wasn't around for
thought
Michael
of
Jordan.
at that point, huh?
I
No.
don't. I don't pay attention to any of this.
Dude,
I just trying to
that's so
start an
hard.
argument. That's
It's
all.
hard to
Michael Jordan.
imagine.
Michael Jordan.
I would always go Michael Jordan.
I'm always
Well, honestly, somehow Lamanna knows less of what he's talking about than you as somebody who wasn't even alive during
Yes,
that era. But
correct.
that's neither here nor there.
I feel like Michael Jordan had no competitor when he was who he was.
He had no equal.
Right.
But I think you
But
can
imagine if he
make
had
a
LeBron
similar-
as
Well,
an equal at the time.
They wouldn't have been, though. Like, that's why he had no equals, because they were equally talented. Well, maybe not equally talented. He was a freak athlete. But his
They both
talent,
are.
and granted, I'm speaking from a place where I'm a casual basketball fan, so pardon me for having an opinion here. But his talent was uniquely his own, right? Like Bird was Bird. He was the Curry of that time, which I hate to even draw that parallel because Curry's infinitely better of an athlete and probably ultimately a better shooter. But
Don't let Brent hear you say that.
well,
Curry's unbelievable. It just is.
yeah, and so was Reggie Miller. Like these guys were like there's lineage, right? Like you can follow the lineage. It's Bird to Reggie to Curry.
Bird's next.
And there's some like great 3-point shooters in between there that I'm probably leaving off. And there's a lineage with like guards as well, where it's like Magic to I don't follow basketball quite closely
We're
enough,
talking about practice.
but yeah, like to from Magic, AI and Magic were different. Magic was more all around, I think. The little I know about basketball, where AI was a scorer, but like yeah, you're right. It was like Magic to AI to.
What do you put Steve Nash in there?
Goat.
Nash and I feel like Nash and Stockton were more comparable. Like they were assist men. You know, they really knew how to move the ball around and run an offense.
I'm pretty sure Steve Nash had the scoring title one year. Like,
I'll challenge that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think that's true.
Wow, we really got to get the book it going on this podcast. This has been a year and a half running.
I mean, yeah. The problem is the man's been slapped in the face. What more can you do to him?
I think you're right on like free throw percentage.
We've hit like peak humiliation. Anyway, point being,
who was humiliated?
when you got slapped in the face,
Yeah, definitely not me.
put him back in line. Point is that like, though there was like outstanding talent during Jordan's era, like a Magic Johnson type or Larry Bird type or many of the others that came and went. Jordan was like uniquely this like perfect all around athlete. And LeBron is as well, but they're so different in their abilities and play style. Like Bron's much more comparable to Magic, I think, than he is to Jordan as far as like his overall ability. But likewise, for much of
Andy's
his career,
calling in. Andy's calling in.
for like much of LeBron's career, he just didn't really have an equal. And I think that's what makes them them. I think that's why they're in that conversation of the greatest of all time. And like the debate is now between Jordan and LeBron, and somehow Kobe's not in the mix. You know what I mean?
didn't really have help before the Heat.
Right.
But
he also didn't really win before the Heat. I mean, he got there.
He did. It's hard to win.
Truly what he did is spectacular. Like I think it was 6 straight NBA finals.
Who?
LeBron. And they went to like 9 of 10, I think.
Yeah, it's funny, ironically, that people use the reason that Jordan is better because Jordan never lost in the finals.
Right.
You know who?
Like just like Eli Manning has never lost in the finals.
You know who the real goat is? Robert Horry. That man has like 6 rings.
Ori,
whatever. Never participated.
I mean,
outside of a clutch 3 here or there.
don't come to my man like that. With Steve Kerr too. Don't forget about him.
Yeah.
Did you find that Steve Nash?
He definitely wasn't
scoring time.
Yeah,
no, he wasn't.
His high. I'm trying to find out who I was thinking, but
Allen Iverson probably.
2005. It was Iverson.
Yeah, very synonymous with Steve Nash.
No, I was
very
thinking about
similar play styles.
For some reason, I was thinking about 2005, and
whatever. Book it. Fucking
yeah,
book
it kind of is rough that Kobe got in that little like. It's weird to say a tier below.
He
right?
was not a tier below. Again, he had no equal.
Who?
Kobe. His closest equal was LeBron, but they're such different players that they're so difficult to.
But people never really had that LeBron versus Kobe kind of debate.
No, because they were just different. Like Kobe. I mean, both of them play all aspects of the game to near perfection, but like Kobe was a grinder. Kobe was like the guy who was in the gym 24/7, where like LeBron was this like statuesque, like Mount Olympian athlete that looked like he's been chiseled out of stone. You know what I mean? Not to slight Kobe at all. Kobe was like really fucking explosive around the rim, but like played bigger than he actually was. But like LeBron just was that. I don't know. He was like between. He could just play all positions. You know what I mean? Like he could be a big man if he had to be.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm going with this with Jordan versus LeBron. They're not the same in play style.
That's
but
my
they're
point.
Just the top of their game and have been for their entire career.
Yeah, that's kind of my point of like why I don't think that debate will ever be settled. They're just too far apart. It would have been like comparing like Jordan and Wilt prior. Like they're just way, way, way different kind of athletes, you know? And obviously comparing through the eras is also very fucking impossible.
Yeah.
We're kind of lucky that LeBron, Kobe, and Jordan, like that lineage was so close together that there was actually overlap. Most sports, you don't see that, right? Like, if you look at football, you went from like Marino, Elway, Kelly, Montana to this like Steve Young stood out, like the early night Steve Young, Troy Aikman, but like
I don't think
they weren't that group.
I don't think you compare athletes that play a certain amount of years apart because they're just in different
eras.
The games
that's what I
just
mean.
play different.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like 85 basketball, everyone's getting thrown into the rafters when they're trying to take a layup.
Right. The 3-point shot wasn't even introduced until
you
the
really
early
see this
80s.
in baseball, right? And you have the argument. It's like, well, Mickey Mantle was the best of all time, but like if you put him in today's game, what would he do? And
when you get that far removed, for sure. But
Right.
even today's standards, when you start to compare somebody like Judge and Bonds or Ohtani and Bonds, it's so hard because the game somehow in the last 2 decades has evolved in a way that like we could never have expected. People
one
throwing
was on the
101.
juice, the other's on probably more advanced juice.
Yeah, it's just like
More undetectable stuff. I mean, these guys look like fucking cyborgs out there.
it's just like one of those
Judge is a
things where
beast.
like you should just really say it by decade. Like every 10 years, this was the best player.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
we enjoy these
The
debates,
argument,
obviously.
Of course, it's just fucking wasted time. Though.
But the truth of the matter is, like, you really, as a fan, just kind of have to sit back and appreciate everybody for what they were in their particular era.
Yeah.
And then just, like, kind of discard these lists as much as you possibly
Yeah.
can. Because, like, I'll die thinking Barry Bonds is the greatest baseball player of all time. But, God damn it, if I can't argue against, or I'm going to have a hard time arguing against Ohtani.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like this guy plays
yeah.
2 positions. Are you fucking kidding
Right.
me? Like, he plays both ways.
Steals 50 bases a year.
Right. Right. And doesn't look like the kind of guy.
He really doesn't look like he's fast, but he's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we were talking about this the other day in Bobby's room, but like, I think it's very understated how much the Japanese style of baseball is making its way into the modern game.
Yeah.
Like, they're just clearly advanced in the way that they approach the game, not just strategically, but the way that they bring up their athletes as well.
Yeah.
You look at a
would
guy
think,
like Ichiro.
Fundamentals wise, like they're probably super sharp, right?
Fundamentally, yes, but they also they don't specialize at all. So you look at a guy like Ichiro, and the rumors were that he could have pitched. Like, he threw 95 plus from the mound. He threw like 98 plus from the outfield.
He pitched against a bunch of like high schoolers or something.
Yeah.
Something after
At like 52.
Yeah.
Yeah, he threw,
Mowing them down.
He pitched against like the number 1 high school team, I think in Japan or whatever, and he threw like a no through like 6 or something.
Amazing.
He was like $150 soaking wet, and if you ever watched him take batting practice, he would hit moonshots.
Yeah.
Like, the rumors were that he could hit 40 bombs a year if he chose to, but he preferred to hit for average because like
Right.
that was his role in the game. So it just seems as though like the development of the athlete in Japan is much more in line with being an all-around player who can be a 5-tool athlete from jump. And because of that, they've dominated. They've dominated the World Baseball Classic. You're seeing some of the highest profile free agents come from Japan. The way that their system works, I believe, is you have to play in their system for 10 years before they'll release you to seek employment elsewhere. Otherwise, your contract can be bought.
Oh.
So I think it was he played for the Yankees.
Who?
Hideki, yeah. I think he was at the time one of the most coveted contracts, and they paid a ton of money for him, I believe, and a lot of it went to the Japanese Baseball League, if I remember correctly.
I think the Little League World Series is kind of telling too, because I remember in the 90s, like Japan just wasn't really a thing, and then now in the last 10, 15 years, like they're a powerhouse.
Yeah, I feel like I remember Japan being there when I was a kid.
Really, because when I was a
Which
kid,
would have been like
I
early
didn't remember
2000s.
like Japan like really being in there.
Yeah, so they play the Little League World Series near us. It's like right outside of State College, Pennsylvania, in Williamsport.
But they've certainly come on in the last 10 or 15 years, is what I'm saying. Like as far as like
yeah.
So-
I just think that there's a chance they may have been a mainstay. Is my bigger point, I guess.
So it wasn't Hideki. It's the next person you're thinking about. Hideki
The
played.
pitcher?
I forgot who. Oh, Darvish. You maybe?
No. Darvis. Yeah, he was a coveted contract as well.
That might have been it because Hideki played 10 years for Napun.
Oh,
in
okay.
Japan.
He came over when he was older.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it was Darvish that they bought out early. I remember. Daisuke. That's right. Boston paid a ton for Daisuke.
Oh,
that's right. Yeah, it was
that was more recent.
Maybe,
over
but
the last 10 years, I think.
I think so, but it was like a 9-figure contract that they bought out or something like that. It was a ridiculous amount of money. I remember there was a big bidding war for him. Oh yeah, remember Nomo? Mm-hmm. Man, love the chat. By the way, your guys' baseball knowledge, especially for Japanese players, incredible.
Where did Nomo play?
The Dodgers.
Yeah,
he had that big fucking goofy ass windup. He was the best. But yeah, like I think it's very understated how much influence they have on the game today and how overstated, maybe not overstated, but like the focus tends to be on these poor island nations, right? Like the Dominican Republic is a big hotbed for baseball.
Right.
Puerto Rico. Yeah. The idea is that like this is their ticket out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's
South
probably
American
true.
Countries like Venezuela.
Yeah, and that probably is true to a degree. And the MLB definitely scouts really hard there because it's they're able to mine for talent for free. They go down there and they put in. I don't know if you guys ever like want to go down the rabbit hole for this, but there's a lot of documentaries on this. They'll go down there and they'll run like these major league camps for like preteens and teens. And they'll just like follow them through their trajectory until they sign them at like 15 or 16 for a very nominal amount of money, get them over to America. They have this whole process of like trying to get them into the country, and sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. But it's pretty exploitative, to be honest, by the MLB. And obviously their influence on the game is very large. You can find a lot of these Dominican players and Puerto Ricans that are, all-stars or elite players within the game, but a lot of them also go by the wayside. You have to understand the volume that the MLB is able to pump through from those nations because it costs them next to nothing is very high. The actual impact of Japanese players is probably much more profound, but it's not really highlighted because the cost to getting them in the league is so high. They either come in as a vet.
There's more like a well-established league too in Japan, where
like
so speaking about the Japan. People coming over. Hideo Nomo.
Yeah.
He and Alfonso Soriano actually came over for free.
Wait, Soriano was in Japan?
Yes.
Really?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
So, but
Nomo came over older.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it was because it just says that some teams lost star players without compensation.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly what time it was, but they did void their
usually
contract.
That means that they played their 10
It looks like they did void their contract, though.
Yeah.
But when Ichiro came over for 13.1, Daisuke came over for 51.1.
Yeah, which at the time was like the biggest contract a Japanese player had ever signed.
And then Yu Darvish 51 as well.
Right.
Tanaka right after that was 20 million under the new rules that they had put in place.
Out of that list, which ones do you think are first ballot Hall of Famers?
Stop.
Just stop.
Yu Darvish.
Ichiro for sure.
Darvish
is very good.
He might be close. He has... Look, like I said, he has 2 fucking World Series, right?
Darvish?
He has one with the Cubs, right?
Was he with the Cubs at the time?
Yeah, he was with the Cubs, and he's been a journeyman. Like
he's been everywhere,
and he's been on nothing but winners. He went from like L.A. to Chicago to Texas, I think. Maybe Houston for a brief stint.
San Diego now.
San Diego now.
All right, so he is a...
He might have been on that Astros team.
He's just been fucking everywhere,
fucking Charlie Morton.
Okay, so 5-time All-Star, All MLB first-time leader. No, he's never won.
Yeah, I thought that like he mostly left before any of these teams won.
That's what I thought.
He's like the person you date, then you find your next your significant other.
Yeah, I'm good luck Chuck.
You're that guy.
I'm good luck Chuck for sure. Just like stop talking to somebody. It's like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. It's like, yeah, I'm engaged. So
you want to get married? Just go out on a date with Berkey.
Yeah, no big deal. I got you. I don't think Darvish is very likely to be a Hall of Famer, but I do believe Ichiro is probably first ballot.
You'll find your forever home.
He's the best. He's the absolute best.
That's what I rehomed them.
Yeah.
Wait, how long? Ichiro's been out of the league for how long now? It's been a while. Shouldn't he already be
not
in the
that
home?
long?
Yeah, he played for
I want to
50
say
years.
I want to say he was still there the COVID season.
When did
He went back to Seattle after.
He started with the Rangers, right?
No,
He started-
he was a No, we're talking about Ichiro.
Yeah.
He was a Mariner, and then he went to the Yankees for 4 or 5 seasons, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended back in Seattle for a year or two.
It was like that year to like retire.
So
His swan song, if you will.
He played 19 seasons
In the MLB?
in the MLB.
Jesus, man.
So-
That's a 30-year career.
That's like Eli Manning.
Right. 'Cause, yeah.
Yeah, he played till he was 45.
What was his last year?
I'm trying to figure that out.
Honestly,
right now.
without looking, if you told me that he hit 290 with 15 bombs and 50 RBIs his final season, I would not be surprised.
No, not at all.
It looks like
Right.
2019.
That's right before COVID. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the season before. So yeah, he'll be coming up. So what is it, 6 years
It's
before
long,
they're
yeah,
eligible?
I think it's longer.
6 or 7.
in baseball than it is
If it's
in
6
football.
years, then it's next year.
It'll be next. It'll be either next year or the year after. But I would imagine. I would suspect
First
Yeah.
ballot
he
Hall
would
of
be
Famer.
first ballot. It seems really hard.
Once you get those 3,000 hits, I mean,
Right.
you know.
And he had 2,000 in Japan, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he
He
really?
had a lot in Japan.
My God.
if I'm not mistaken, I think he has 5,000 lifetime hits.
Pro hits, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is just
Did
like
he ever win?
insane.
Did he ever win?
No,
I don't think so. No,
No.
he just.
I mean, you're on the Mariners, man. No
that's the
offense.
thing. Like with baseball, is you just have to be on the right team if you're gonna win. Like it's not like one person can like impact you to like.
You know, it's funny because we
I mean,
talk.
last year was
we talk
crazy,
about,
right?
All the way.
We talk about the parity in the NFL, and it's true. Of all the team or of all the sports, it definitely does have a lot more parity than most.
Mhm.
But there's also a lot of like short-lived dynasties, 2, 3 type winners. You know, the Steelers had a little pocket of like 6 years where they were in the conversation. You look at the 70s, it was the Steelers. The 80s, it was the Niners.
Cowboys.
The 90s, it was the Cowboys. But the Cowboys only won twice in the 90s.
But they won every time, right?
No, they won 3 times.
Yeah. I think they
Oh.
won more.
They won 3 times.
And I feel
They
like
won
they
back to
they
back.
won-
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
They
91, 92, and then
they beat
95,
us. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Right. I forgot they beat us.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And now we're
wiped that
looking
out
at
my memory.
the Chiefs as being the next dynasty.
The Chiefs though are on par with like the Patriots type of dynasty where
Yeah.
there is no parity.
Right. Yeah. For
But
sure.
where I was going with this is like in the MLB, it's like those runs are longer because of the lack of parity. So you'll just see the Yankees and Red Sox there year after year after year. And if you're not on one of those teams, you don't get the win.
Right. The Dodgers are in that mode right now. They're just like always in it. The Astros, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dodgers only won one though recently, right?
They only won 1. Yeah. But they're just always there. They're
Right.
just always like winning the division, and they're like going to be in the NLCS, and so they might win it this year.
Yeah. I'm rooting against it, I think.
To them to win it all. Or
Well, I definitely don't want them to win it all. For
No.
sure don't want that.
I want to see Dodgers and Yankees. I definitely want to see the Yankees there.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
the
care about
opposite.
Cleveland.
I want to see Cleveland.
Cleveland needs to get.
I'd rather-
See you later.
And I think if the Yankees are in it, then it doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
going to be a good series, right? Because it's going to either be the Subway Series, which Mets versus Yankees, that's just awesome, and then or it's Dodgers versus Yankees, it's Judge versus Ohtani. Like
Yeah, I would
that's
love-
what I want to see.
I would love either way. I think a Subway Series would just be fucking absolutely amazing to have one of those again. Because that's just obviously
I used to be like
makes New York go crazy.
Yeah. I used to be on the side, like, it's just like, the evil empire, and this is like what's wrong with baseball and all
No,
this
it
stuff.
is.
And I agree, it is, but you know what? It's entertaining, and I'm here for the entertainment. There's nothing's going to change. I'm not going to change anything. So
Yeah. Honestly, you might have sold me. I think Dodgers Yankees.
I mean, think about it.
Is the best series.
Judge versus fucking Ohtani. How do you get better than that?
Right.
I'm
just wanna see
speaking
the
of my
best
own
of the best.
personal.
Yeah.
Like I'm just put off by those teams.
You
Like
want- you
when
want-
they're
you
on
want a
TV, I
home-
don't like watching
You
them.
want a home feeling Midwestern
Yeah.
Cleveland
Yeah.
team, something really close to your heart, nice and Midwestern.
It can't be
could-
Cleveland though. If you want Cleveland to win, I can't take it.
If I could have cherry picked 2 teams out of everybody that made the World Series out of everybody that made the playoffs rather to go to the World Series, I would have cherry picked.
Detroit?
Yeah,
I would
mine
have cherry
would've been
picked Philly
Tigers.
and Detroit.
It's funny. Mine wouldn't have been Philly. It would definitely been the Tigers. I would take the Tigers over the Yankees, I think. Just because that's a good feeling. Like that's they paid $30 million for their fucking roster.
I know it's.
I
Wild.
don't know. It feels
we
like
pay that for our third base coach probably.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know, it seems like they did pretty good,
That's
right?
just like.
Yeah, they did great.
Yeah,
Detroit?
Judge's
Yeah.
left leg.
Like Detroit did good. You know, like you don't need the World Series. Like leave the World Series for like actual talent for the first time in a while.
That's the most cunty thing I've ever heard in
you
my
see that-
life. That's like, hey, go play a poker tournament, but you're not as smart as me, so don't final table it.
Right.
That's how it
Like,
works.
that is the cuntiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
No, but I just mean in the
Jesus
sense of like
Christ.
if you have $30 million and you get to like a step above making the playoffs, like that's been like a great season for you.
Yeah. They all.
And so like obviously it's like the feel good thing of like, oh, like they have nothing, like the whole underdog story thing. But at some point, when's the last time you saw a really like
It's about
insane World
expectation, right?
Series
It's about
like
expectation.
the Royals in the mid 2010s.
Yeah.
okay, so 15 years ago?
No.
Tampa
like
Bay made it,
2015,
but
I
they
think.
didn't win. But Tampa Bay made it. Like there's, these small market teams.
Yeah,
can
last year
do
Arizona
it.
made it.
Yeah.
They're smallish, mid
But like
market.
viewership was so much lower. Like the MLB
last year had to be a fucking tank.
It was like the worst.
It was Arizona, Texas. Like
Yeah.
I can't think of
Right.
a
But that's
worse
cool
scenario.
though.
It
Like
is-
Arizona, like they had a small market team for the most
They're
part.
not that small.
I mean, come on, think about it. Like when you think about the World Series, you think about baseball. Arizona's going to be a small market for
Yeah.
us.
It's funny because they were showing. They're like, oh my God, look at the Mets. They're like the little engine that could.
Yeah, fuck
No,
you.
people are talking. They're like,
$300 million payroll.
Right. Exactly. But they have a $300 million payroll.
That's,
Right.
that's kind of the point, though, right? Like you don't want if it tanked last year, you don't want the same thing to happen again.
More importantly, we're going to have this conversation next week because Efro's coming to studio.
Well,
Oh baby.
I do think that if you get the Mets Dodgers, or sorry, the Yankees Dodgers or the Mets Yankees, it's a series for coastal elites, and you do push the Midwest viewership out. Like I think that there's a lot to be said for an Atlanta, a Philly, a San Diego type team.
But what do you think about
making it from
the
NL?
flip side of that? Like when you put Cleveland in there, you don't
No,
think
no,
that
no, I
pushes
agree
the
with
East,
you.
like the whole East is gone. We don't give a shit.
The
The real East Coast, not the Midwest. We're out.
Well, it depends. If it's Cleveland, New York, that's not true.
I feel
Oh,
like
yeah,
at some
sure,
point though, like
sure,
people just want to watch like sick baseball, Like in the
Yeah.
World Series, like you kind of like if your
You're
team didn't
under-
make it, like you
you're
want to watch sick
understating.
baseball.
You're just understating
Cleveland's a
how
really
good
team.
Cleveland is.
Cleveland's
Yeah.
a really good
They
team.
are.
They got for
Yeah,
sure.
They're just not as good as the
Like they've been
Yankees.
in the conversation for the World Series for the last 6 years, and this is probably the best team that they've put together.
Do they have Rick Vaughn?
Wild thing.
How many first ball Hall of
coming
Famers do they have?
Probably zero.
Yeah.
There's probably fewer than 3 first ballot Hall of Famers in the playoffs currently.
Whoa.
You were in 3.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably 2.
There's
Which is
K-
Judge and
Kershaw
Ohtani.
and
Yeah.
Kershaw.
What about
Kershaw's hurt.
Was he still in the playoffs?
No, he's not.
All
He's
right.
at home on a
Soto
couch.
might be at the end.
Soto is what? How? Actually, hold on. Soto is definitely going to be in a conversation.
Bro, Jesus Christ.
He
You're
was
so
19
quick.
when he won his first one. He's
About
like
Stanton.
24.
You're just so quick to just like.
What about Mookie Betts?
What about Mookie Betts?
Mookie Betts is not going to be first ballot Hall of Fame. These guys are fucking great, but like you guys act. Does like Griffey not mean anything to you? Does like, you know what I mean?
He means
like,
a lot to me.
Like
It means nothing to me.
when you go back to certain era,
I
you're
love
not
the
gonna
shoes.
look at this era and think like
Mookie
Mookie
Betts.
fucking Betts, baby.
He's good. He's good.
I don't know,
Yes,
man. Maybe
he's very
You're
good.
gonna think Ohtani. You're gonna think a Judge.
Right.
Yes.
Those guys are 2 of the 3 that I had in mind.
Right.
Who's the third?
Who's the third?
Cole possibly might be the 3rd if his career continues on the trajectory that's
Yeah.
on.
I mean,
But like, yeah, I digress.
for you
Right.
not to say
I
that about Soto as well is absurd.
Soto can go either way, man. Hitters are a dime a dozen. That's
All
a
right,
bit
we've exhausted
exaggerated.
this. Let's move on to hockey.
what about cricket? Get Hunter in
Oh,
the studio.
talking about hockey. You guys had a beautiful opening game. You know, you
This
lost
guy's
6.
clinging to the past. They're literally 12 games into the season.
You lost 6-0.
They're 12 games
Six
into the
to the
season. He
Rangers?
wants to
That's nothing.
dance about the fucking opening game.
Over the
Who
game.
cares?
That's all. You know, we had to touch on hockey real quick. So let you guys know, Penguins are trash.
Go touch yourself,
I will.
Bertucci.
Ugh. Should you ever put me in the same
Bertucci.
fucking...
Yeah, Bertucci. Before we get into today's special guest, I want to give a little shout out to Bally's Live. I haven't been watching since they moved to the Commerce, unfortunately, but I do know that tomorrow they are running an event. It looks like it's going to be a game that features some of the ladies in poker. I sent you a tweet, Guap. It's going to have our friend Caitlin Komeski, Poker Mama, Tiffany Michelle, Veronica is going to be on. Julia, who you guys may remember from Breaking the Vertucci story. Who else is in this? Looks like Baby Shark is in there. Christina Gollins and Jenny Ding.
Why is Mama Joe in there?
I was about to say
Mama
What's
Joe
the
needs to
problem?
get in there.
Mama Joe, there's a seat open.
So all these women have a story that you can follow. Jenny Ding is a vlogger. Baby Shark, obviously an MTT crusher. Julia plays on DGAF's live stream all the time. Also was breaking the news for the Vertucci pod, or the Vertucci scandal rather. Tiffany Michelle is doing content for Poker.org. Poker Mama is vlogging. She's out in the street. She's playing a bunch of live streams as well. Caitlin putting out all the comedy. Hopefully she has a little something in store for tomorrow. And then Veronica, of course, was a part of the whole Vertucci mess, as well as the Apostle Whistleblower. So be sure to show up, give them a little bit of support, give them a little love in the chat, and let us know how it goes. Maybe we'll find a hand or two that we can dissect on stream tomorrow. Luckily for you guys, we're not going to be all sports ball today. I didn't know what we were going to get into. Poker streets are a bit dry at the moment. Not a whole lot going on. There's a PLO series at the Go studio, but I don't know the 4-card game. No one in this room really does, so can't really talk too much about that. Shout out to REA, who got second yesterday's opening 5K event. And you guys don't want to hear any more sports ball, so our Survivor picks, we'll save that for Friday. Luckily, I threw a Hail Mary and I said, hey, man, I know we haven't set a day or a time where you can regularly start to, pop into the show, but we're a little light today. Can you click the link? And Andrew Barber said, sure. Why the fuck not?
Snap.
Nice.
So hopefully if we got him in the bullpen.
I didn't have the Zoom link open. I didn't know we had somebody.
My bad. That's on me.
I mean, you said special guest, and Landon and I looked at each other and we were like, who's the special guest? Do I miss this?
I had a feeling it was going to be
Show?
Barber.
I said it during the countdown, but nobody ever listens
Brother,
when I
we
talk.
were talking
so it's
about
okay.
who is a Hall of Famer
Yeah,
during
well,
the
I'm thinking
countdown.
about first ballot Hall of Fame.
understand.
You know who's the first ballot Hall of
Andrew
Famer?
Barber.
Andrew Barber.
Andrew Barber. First ballot debater Hall of Famer.
First ballot Hall of Famer for saving our ass. So once we get the Zoom up and running, we're going to try to bring him in here.
We got to make the OnlyFriends Hall of Fame.
Are we?
Zoom's up, Andrew, if you want to give us a call.
All right, we're good to go.
All of our friends will be first ballot Hall of Famers.
Are we
'cause
getting
make
into
the
betting
rules.
markets?
What do you guys? Yeah, what do you guys want to pick his
Kamala
brain
at
about?
3-2?
Yeah.
I think it's a wrap for the Orange Man.
Wait, what are you
as
saying?
in he's
As
the
in,
winner.
like, he's got it locked up.
Yeah, as he's wrapping it up.
Yeah.
We can definitely talk to him about that. I think it was him that I saw put a tweet out the other day. Oh, maybe it was Mike McDonald.
No.
It was one of the two. But somebody said basically if you're not keeping all of your capital on the side for the emotional bettors as the market comes to a close on November 5th, like you're kind of a fish.
You're cooked.
That is true.
I mean, apparently at the moment, like Brian was telling me on Polymarket, if you buy shares of Kamala at 40 cents, it turns into $1 she wins.
That works, yep.
So like you're kind of printing if you don't think it's a 60-40.
You're in 2.5 to 1, yeah.
If you think it's 50-50, but like you're printing if you think, like you have to be also right. You can't just think it and then be wrong.
Well,
like, you could, you know what I mean?
You have to be theoretically right.
Right, exactly.
I mean, which means that you would have to have some sharpness to know that the line is actually something.
Right, and someone who is sharp is Nate Silver, and the last I checked, he had Kamala at 51%.
That was
like
a week ago.
No, it was only a couple days ago.
Can someone explain to me what
days ago,
happened in this short amount of time that has changed the market to be the way it is?
A lot of polls came out. So a lot of polls came out, and they were all in favor of Trump. So so now he's like if you look at like the Real Clear Politics, which is the average of all the polls, he is leading in like all the swing states, and so like that's just going to make Kamala's path a lot harder. Now on the there's a lot of people. It's tough because people are saying, well, if you look at all the polls in Real Clear Politics, you're going to see a lot of like heavily Trump favored polls. Like they lean right more often, like Rasputin and Trafalgar. These polls lead right. So he's always going to be like a few points ahead than the other polls, and they're including those, but not including maybe more pro Kamala polls. So you could say that the polls are skewed towards Trump a little more, but that's one argument for the other side.
I was going to say, didn't this happen 4 years ago? With the polls kind of saying it was like going to be red, and then cue the red mirage.
The red mirage is different. The red mirage is what happens when so Pennsylvania, that happens with the mail-in ballots, where like all mail-in ballots were heavily Democratic because Trump was saying don't mail in your ballot.
Won't it
right?
So what happened this year?
That has nothing to do with polls. Right, that's something separate. That was when
they were calling states early, basically.
Right. So when the election night would happen, what would happen was all the in-person votes would get counted first, so it would look like Trump had a huge lead. And then when they started counting the mail-in ballots, it would even it back out. Or
these polls are done online.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What's a melon ballot?
Mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballot. A melon ballot.
Melon ballot.
It's a melon ballot. Like melon bank.
His mouth is working faster than his brain can.
Yeah.
We found a topic that the tortoise very much enjoys discussing.
I just feel like it's kind of the same thing as if the polls are online.
No.
So you have to go somewhere to do it.
No, it's a lot of times.
Polling, you don't get those annoying texts and phone calls and shit like that.
You're
probably not registered to vote.
It's a combination of things. There's phone calls. There's
of course you're not. You don't have a driver's license. How could you be registered to vote?
Yeah, leave me alone.
So yeah, you're out of this discussion. Barber, welcome.
What's up, guys?
Hey,
you're coming in hot today. You have no idea what you're stepping your feet into.
New background.
First of all, first and foremost, let's get this out of the way. Eli Manning, first ballot Hall of Famer.
Man, I don't know enough, but I think so.
Oh man!
Oh yeah, suck on that gas, Berkey. Suck on that gas, Berk.
You know what? I think in the spirit of trying to like rep what I believe in, I should just say I don't know. Like I don't know.
That was a great start.
That is.
You just qualifying it with I don't know enough, and then I think he is was perfect because that's exactly Conrad.
That's all I needed. Let's go, baby.
I don't know shit, but let me shoot from the hip.
We got this. Don't worry, we got this.
All right, something that you are a little bit more versed on. We were just kind of discussing how the poly market has shifted pretty heavily in Trump's favor. I'm curious of your take on this because we did all see that Nate Silver put out a poll maybe last week, I think it was like late last week where he
updates every day.
Okay, so the last one that I personally saw was sometime last week, and I think he had Kamala at like 53, where Poly Market had it as the inverse with Trump at like 53, and Kamala as low as 40.
Kamala.
Whatever, Kamala. I don't give a shit. I'm not gonna put respect on any of these guys' name. They all suck. Anyway,
wow.
Had her at like 40%.
So right now it's 49.2 Harris, 46.4 Trump for the national in Nate Silver's page.
Okay, so he has.
You're looking at 538.
I'm looking at the NateSilver.net.
Okay.
It's no longer 538.
Correct. That's why I asked.
Okay, that's the one I was pulling up.
So if that's the case, why don't you just slam Kamala at 40 cents?
Because this is what we're asking Barber about. Like, what's accurate here? You trust the betting market, or do you trust Nate Silver's ability to project things?
Yeah,
I trust math.
Yeah, what is your take on that? Because I think like when people look at betting markets, some people think they're much more accurate than the polls, and then other people are on the other side. Where do you land on that, Barber?
So I think prediction markets are awesome, and I've been shilling them for a long time, and I'm really glad they're becoming more liquid. Like Kalshi, who I think is sponsoring that project that Mycon and Glance and Richie are doing.
Oh, the podcast they're doing?
Yeah. It's like that Market Mania or whatever is sponsored by Kalshi. Kalshi's, I think, takes bets up to 25K. And it's U.S. facing. It's legal for U.S. bettors. Yeah. As opposed to like Poly Market, which is in like a gray area, but obviously
you got to use a VPN. Right.
But I would say in general, prediction markets are good and are going to be better sources of information for predicting when things are going to happen than a pundit. But I think elections are actually an interesting area because we don't have enough trials and there's not a lot of learning that goes on. Like election markets tend to be the softest. Like you look at the sports betting market, it's hard as hell to find an edge there, even if you're like big free, which nobody is. But assuming you could find big free lines, I don't think you're going to make a lot of money there. Mm-hmm. But whereas election lines, I think there's tons of money to be made just because they tend to not always reflect reality. And I think that might be what's going on with poly market, but I don't want to seem like a partisan shill. But it is interesting that there's such a gap. Like there's an arbitrage opportunity. I think you're betting Kamala at 40 cents.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm like shoving the money in at 50-50.
Yeah, it's interesting because like if you look at so Polymarket obviously is a crypto website, so you have to actually kind of know how to use be in the crypto space a little bit to use it, I think. And if the whole crypto world, I mean, for the most part, is pro-Trump because he's the pro-crypto candidate. So I think that like it could be that's why maybe you do see that arbitrage and you do see it skewed that way is because people like to bet with their heart, and like the majority of the crypto world is for Trump, so maybe they're just pushing it that way. But I think the best part about the markets is I think that it would correct eventually because the sharp people will come in and see an opportunity and push it back down to probably where the true value is.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Is at some point this window goes away, or does it keep getting bigger if people think that Trump is just going to swoop it?
Well,
I think the forces that Brian's referring to, I think they start to take effect as the gap gets larger because people are sitting on the sidelines and they're, waiting for particularly large edges. That being said, I mean, I don't expect an efficient market here because I will never forget for the rest of my life, and it's one of my favorite stories to tell, just the amount of volume there was trading on the 2020 election after the election was over.
Right. Exactly, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on the prediction markets as a whole with presidential elections is economically speaking, and again, I'm not as sharp, so like I defer to you, but isn't it just pretty commonplace that the majority, albeit maybe it's a simple majority, but the majority of liquidity is going to tend to skew right a bit? And when it comes to these types of things, you tend to be a little bit more emotional in the way that you bet. So I would almost always suspect, like, I would think it would be quite rare outside of maybe like Obama's first election where the left is like a sizable favorite in these betting markets.
Yeah, I'd have to look back historically. I mean, like, I think your priors kind of matches my own in that I think that there's what economists would call like selection effects. Like when you select for the kind of person who is going to have like tons of liquid funds, B, be in crypto, C, want to fire on election stuff. Like I think you're selecting for the kind of person that leans right. But also I think that the kind of people who are in crypto tend to be sharp. So I wouldn't expect them to be like total whales.
Yeah,
but
I agree
some
with
of
that.
like the big contracts that are being traded on Polymarket like appear to be from like total whales.
Right.
Based on some of the comments they have in the
am I correct that it's like nearly 2 billion in volume?
I didn't know it was that large. That might be across like multiple markets. I think just the presidential, I don't know if it's that large. I mean, like this is
it is 2 billion on the actual presidential election winner. Yeah, it's 2 billion right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, people are getting down like $1 million plus bets.
Yeah. There are 127,000 comments, Berkey, if you want me to read them all out. Right?
We're going to pass on you and Conrad reading for another day, perhaps.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Like when it comes to how in other spaces we've agreed that models and solves are sort of the be-all, end-all, or like where you should look as an authority.
No, you have agreed on this. I absolutely do not agree. I'm staunchly against the notion.
Play a pile solver for 100,000 hands and bet me on it.
That's not the same as what you just said.
Why is it not the same?
Because we're talking about making prediction bets based off of the models that you're orchestrating, and there's a clear margin of error there. So,
which is how much?
We don't know. If we knew, then we would bet accordingly.
So if you can get Kamala on 40 cents on Polymarket, you should probably just do that.
So then do it.
Yeah, get in the streets, young man.
I'm saying I'm not crazy for seeing that there's like actual value here.
So go value.
There could be.
Trump's down to 85, or I'm sorry, 58.5. So it maybe is starting to correct.
Well, of course, big crypto watchers on the OnlyFans.
That's what I'm saying. People are.
Our audience is
I'm not saying that
right
happened
now.
in the last 5 minutes, but like it like when I looked this morning or maybe last night, it was 60-40, and so you're seeing people coming in, and I hear people talking about actually people in the crypto space who think that their bags are going to pump hard if Trump wins, taking a hedge.
Of course,
taking Kamala as a hedge.
Yeah, of course,
right?
it's a great opportunity.
Right.
And so that you bring up a great point there. Like if you think about prediction markets. If you go back to like futures markets, the purpose of futures markets being established was as a hedge for people who were in commodities or were growing food.
That was Kalshi's whole thing.
Themselves. Yeah, and then Kalshi's that was Kalshi's angle. Like, okay, we're going to provide opportunities for retail and commercial investors to be able to have hedges. And then I think when you look at election bets as being correlated to financial outcomes, now you create a situation in which there's just going to be arbitrage opportunities galore because the market's never going to correct because there's so many people who are trying to find a hedge.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might be happening.
Yeah, and I think another clear indicator of that too, right, is that we expect that the Democrats will almost certainly win the popular vote, and this is pretty consistent year in and year out, right?
So that's interesting too, because we were having this conversation a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, Polymarket has Kamala at 75 cents, and I thought that was a good bet there. And I just looked, and especially with the new polls and everything that's coming out with the Trump pump. The Trump pump. Now it's down to 63 or 64 cents for her to win. So
but still a pretty sizable favorite. And I guess my point there is
that feels like a good bet to me. Yeah.
Okay, fair. But my bigger point is that. If we expect the sizable favorite to almost always be that the left will show up in droves for the popular vote, to me that indicates that they're also not really betting the actual presidential race because that gap is just too wide compared to like that delta is to me is like too wide compared to what we expect the popular vote to be. And I understand that the correlation's not 1-to-1, but there is some positive correlation between those two.
I mean, not as much as you'd think. I mean, I think to Landon's point about like, all right, like, shouldn't we be able to have models and bet on them? I think that there's models, like I think the sharps are looking at like early voting and stuff, and state by state polling and trying to determine like what's the probability of win. I mean, I think all the like exotic markets on particular states being one or bundles of states being one are interesting. But that's what you have to understand. You don't have to understand like the national polls. You need to understand like how is Pennsylvania swinging.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like one of the most popular bets I see, at least for these last two election cycles, is betting on Pennsylvania. Exactly.
Well, it's going to be the tipping point state most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's the Keystone State, Matt.
Right, exactly. It is the Keystone State.
Like I just remember 4 years ago, like getting bets in, very like smallish. I had no idea what I was doing, but on like Michigan being blue. At like a minus 350, where the polls had them at like a huge favorite, way greater than 350.
Yeah.
So like it just seems like that sort of stuff is bound to happen.
Well,
kind of in politics only.
I don't think anybody's arguing that there will be mispriced markets. It's who's sharp enough to be able to spot it. Like Nate Silver,
right?
Like I would expect Nate Silver to make a lot of money during election cycles.
The reason why these markets are so mispriced is because they're just not mature. Like, it doesn't happen enough, right?
I think that's part of it. Barber can speak more to this.
100% that.
Well, isn't it also partially just like how emotional the market tends to be, like the behavioral market?
I think that I think you sometimes see this in poker. I mean, it's not the best example because there are whales that keep coming back, but like part of the reason that poker's gotten harder is like the deadest money has removed itself from the player pool because they've gotten enough trials to realize like, okay, I'm drawing debt or I'm close to it. And so I think if you could have like a presidential election every week for 4 years, I don't think you'd see the market. The market would be in the same condition that it is now because people just can't learn.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So basically what you're saying is like, even if there is some behavioral economics taking place here where people are just betting with their hearts, even in mass, it wouldn't matter because the sharps would just scoop that money up if they were given enough trials.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. So, I mean, I think your point's taken that there is emotional stuff going on, but I don't think that the person who is, you know, a Trump fan or a Kamala fan is going to, you know, punch their bankroll week in and week out if they keep, you know, placing the same bet.
Right. The churn there's so high if it's done in volume. I understand. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me, which makes this a very fun time of year for gamblers.
Yeah.
I'm interested in politics again.
Right.
This is how you get me.
This is how you get people
I don't care who wins. I just want a good line. Give me a good line.
You know, there's a substantial amount of money being bet currently in Bobby's room on it's a last longer between Biden and Trump.
Like life?
Yeah.
Who dies first?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, those assassination attempts, they were met with different reactions.
Oh, wait a minute. Was it even money?
No, there was a slight price. I think
Biden's got to be the favorite.
I think the Trump side was laying like 125.
Biden's not the favorite. Biden's a dog.
He's got to be a dog.
I'm saying the favorite to go first.
I don't know. I mean, with these attempts.
Well, right, but they made the bet like 18 months ago before it was even clear that Donald was going to run again. And I think that Trump side laid like 125, if I'm not mistaken. Something to that effect. Yeah.
I thought death pools had a no assassination like clause to them typically.
Maybe. I mean,
I'm not even kidding. Like, this is serious because there are. I mean, there's tons of death pool action actually.
Right.
No, yeah, of course. I would imagine if you're betting on Biden though, you're kind of like making a wager on Trump getting assassinated.
Listen, I don't know, man. I mean, Trump just
probably shouldn't be saying this stuff on a mic.
We shouldn't. Like, Trump does kind of look like he's one cheeseburger away at times.
Well, I mean, bro's just out there ripping uppers and.
Yeah, like I mean, he does not like.
Now watch this drive.
Like Biden looks like his mind is gone, but like Trump looks like an unhealthy individual.
I don't know. Tell it to the medics, right?
Okay,
the medics
fine. Yeah, like Trump looks unhealthy. Biden actually looks dead. I truly think if you told me they've been dressing a corpse up for the last 6 months, I wouldn't. I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
I mean, he looks pretty old.
Was it you that tweeted? I could be misquoting here, but it was either you or Mike McDonald or somebody on my timeline. I thought I saw it that said something to the effect of the real sharp money in these markets right now are just keeping themselves on the sidelines until November 5th when all the emotional money flows in.
I mean, yeah, I cannot stress what a crazy time it was for me in 2020 and like the weeks after the election, and just like could not believe. I mean, the closest thing I can come up with is imagine the cards are on their backs and the river is out and you know you have the best hand and your opponent wants to raise. Like
right.
That's I mean, that was going on for weeks and I just could not believe it. And honestly, my biggest regret was that I only bet like 100% of my roll instead of like 200%
leveraging up or something.
300%. Yeah. I should have been levered to the max. I should have called it loans and favors.
Right.
But there was effectively infinite liquidity.
You know, believe it or not,
normal person.
I had this exact situation happen to me at the table just 3 days ago, and I didn't accept the gift. I open aces. The straddle calls and then says, let's play 100K pot. And I go, okay, do you want to put 50K in now? And he goes, absolutely. And I have aces. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'll put 50,000 in right now. And it was a recreational. I was like, I can't. I didn't want to like give up the strength of my hand because I didn't think he was serious.
Right.
So I was like, nah, like you seem too confident. I'm going to pass. We get the showdown and now a 3K pot because the board didn't come out all that great. And he has kings.
Oh my God. How did that happen?
Who's the sucker now?
I feel like if you assign him kings and like if I took kings and you took the field, I feel like I might actually bet you there because based on card removal, there's not too many hands he says that with other than kings, right?
Well, so this is why I was like a little unhappy with the situation, just because I in no way, shape, or form could ever give him credit for kings or aces. Like, he just called an open, like, it's a single raise pot. So
he was trapping you.
So in my mind, if he's like, out of line, he has like queens. So it's like, I would have accepted this bet with queens or better in theory if I was just, propositioned of like, hey, this guy just wants to put all his money in after having called pre. And he seems like he has a pretty strong hand. It's like, oh, okay, he probably trapped with jacks or tens or ace king. So if I have queens or better, like, I'd be happy to put all the money in. But it turns out I'd be getting fucked really hard because he might only say this with exactly kings, right? Like, the one time his brain misfired and he decided to just call pre, he corrects for it by saying like, hey, want to put all the money in now? Because it's like, I would obviously say yes with hands that I would not have gotten 50K in with pre-flop, like queens or jacks or something to that effect. But anyway.
What a nice guy you are. What a nice guy.
I'm always thinking long term, and all I do is fuck myself in the short term over and over and over again.
It's kind of scummy when you do say yes, though, because you're not going to say yes with queens. You're not going to say yes with. Like,
I would have said yes with queens. You just said he would have
said yes with queen.
I would have been happy to say yes with queens. Yeah, I would be happy to say yes with queens. I don't think ever has kings or aces. I mean, I wouldn't have actually said yes with any hand because I would have felt like I was taking advantage.
Yeah.
But I would never say yes with aces because then I'm
really
absolutely taking advantage.
Exactly.
At least with queens, I'm gambling a little bit.
You're just absolutely free rolling yourself.
Why do you have to gamble in this spot when someone tries to give you 50K?
I guess just like, I don't know.
Out of the goodness of your heart?
No, that's obviously not it. I don't know, man. I just, you're right. Like, I should just, I've just never been that guy, and I loathe that guy that just like takes every single positive edge. It's like, I have information that he doesn't have, right? So it just feels off or wrong to me.
I have the best hand.
But like, he's propping you.
Yeah,
well, the guy's just making
it's a weird spot.
Well, it's because he has information that I don't have, which is that he has pocket kings.
Exactly. But I think Burke, like, to put it to parallel, like, it would be like if the guy like was, he had a bunch of money in a bag, and it was a very unsecure bag, and it all fell out on the ground. It was like, is that just yours now? Because he's an idiot and makes this very dumb mistake, right? You would be like, no, here, take your money back.
I think this is different, though, man.
It is because it's within the framework of gambling.
It is, and you have info he doesn't have. He has info you don't have. That's poker.
Yeah.
That's any gambling thing ever. Like, when I put LaCroix in the fridge and he wanted to bet me.
No, right, but it's just outside the constructs of the actual game we're playing. Like, now we're doing business. You know what I mean? Like,
you didn't bring it. If you brought it up, it's a little different.
But we already had the opportunity to put the 50,000 in, is my point. Within the construct of the game, and we chose not to.
But it's funny because, like, if it was the situation that Barber brought up in the first place, where it's like you can just take people's money after the fact, right, of the election, you do it because you're not looking.
I wouldn't hesitate.
Yeah, you're not looking them in the face.
It's also it's a different market.
It's a different market.
I don't need that one to survive.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Going back to that, I'm curious. Do you think there will be a similar post-election response this time, where a market forms?
Oh, baby.
Depends on who
in theory, it should never happen again because, like, a lesson was learned, and it was kind of an unusual situation in terms of, like, the election being appealed and stuff. It was also largely influenced by the fact that FTX was operating these contracts, and FTX got pressured by, like, trolls to keep the contracts open, like, to not expire them or not close them out.
Right.
And so because they kept them open, like, they continued to trade. And that was a whole, weird thing about how to think about trading these contracts after the election. And then also in the context of, FTX being questionable at that time, like, people were getting nervous. There was the fact that the value of crypto was changing a lot. So I think for all these reasons, I don't think that same, I don't think the stars will align in the way that they did. I suspect that maybe the days of deciding elections like night of or day after are probably behind us. Like, I don't see that happening.
I think it depends on how close it is, right?
Yeah, but I think that elections are just going to be close. Like, it's just crazy how you can have people have been pushing this median voter theorem for such a long time, which basically is that candidates should be moving closer and closer to each other, trying to fight for the median voter. So like in theory, you should have candidates that are like very close to each other ideologically. But now we kind of have people going the opposite direction,
Right.
and roughly the same thing is happening. I mean, they've made some push in recent weeks and months trying to come up with populist proposals like no taxes on tips and Kamala's own goal of like, oh, I really want to expand opportunities for blacks in crypto. So I think they're all trying to come up with ways of attracting the marginal voter or the median voter who they think is winnable. Who knows about like the legitimacy of those strategies?
How much? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was kind of the end of my thought.
How much influence do you think this new push by Elon has? And I don't know if you saw or not, but I think I saw something today where he either created or donated to a super PAC called America First or something along those lines, 75 million, which I assume is being distributed to the Trump campaign. How much influence do you think that will have over the general vote, particularly in these swing states? Like, I know that Elon went to the Steeler game 2 weeks ago. I believe they're planning on going back.
Trump's going this
weekend. I just saw something that I can't remember the VP for Kamala.
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz. Yeah, he just did like a meet and greet at Acusure today, and I believe he plans to be in attendance this weekend. Like, they're clearly targeting Pennsylvania specifically, and
it's so annoying. It's terrible being here.
I can imagine.
I can only imagine just how bombarded you are.
And then
I get 5-6 pieces of political mail every single day.
Of course.
Shit, we do too.
I mean, we get a lot here. We're a swing state technically, but not to the degree of Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I imagine that like they're going particularly hard in cities like Pittsburgh and Philly that are notoriously blue, but on the fringe and can trend a little bit more on the purple side of things. So I'm curious, like, because Elon, to me, over the general person, especially somebody who's maybe a little bit less informed, a little bit less dialed in to the general happenings of the world, he's a bit of a god. He's a godlike figure, and I would think that he would have a lot of, I guess, sway when it comes to throwing his weight behind a particular candidate. Maybe not as much as T-Swift, but close.
It's hard to measure the impact of someone's speech, but like the dollars for sure. Like you can, like dollars roughly convert to votes at some exchange rate.
Okay.
Like I think this is well understood in like TV ads and mailings and phone stuff. But then it largely cancels because both sides kind of, it's like it's an arms race. So both people, raise, billions of dollars, and then like the money roughly cancels, assuming, that they roughly raise the same amount. But I actually think that the way that he has more influence is like some of the stuff that he does with Twitter. I think that that's probably having more impact than like, I don't know, tens of millions, something like that.
Right. Could we see something similar to the Russian influence that we had on Facebook in the last cycle? Or was it 2 cycles ago? 2 cycles ago, sorry.
Yeah, in 2016. I think something that, if people haven't thought about this, it's something worth considering. Like, there's a really good chance that a significant fraction of the traffic that you interact with or see on a daily basis is not from humans.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only going to get worse. Like, you might even have full-on conversations with AI-driven bots. And so, I do wonder how many of the stands on both sides conceivably, but it does seem to be like a little skewed, are puppet accounts.
It could be particularly skewed if he just chooses to be a bit diabolical with his platform, right? Like, I don't know the degree to which Zuck was actually involved in the 2016. I don't even know if that's necessarily public or has been explored all that much, but it did ultimately come out that Facebook was a platform that was heavily leveraged from the marketing side of things for influenced by Russian influence, right, for Trump. And the belief was that it did sway the election in some sort of capacity. Elon seems to be a single actor when it comes to operating this platform and doing with it as he sees fit. Are there any checks and balances in place that would ever prevent him from just leveraging that entire platform in an effort to get Trump elected?
I don't think so. I think that I think he's the kind of person who is willing to, I've read a bio of Elon and heard various stories. He is a person who, when absolutely determined to do something, will do whatever it takes. And I think it's led to him being successful. I also think it's unfortunately leading to the positive perception of him declining, vis-a-vis Twitter and the management of that platform. I think it's so dumb that he's so awesome at Tesla and SpaceX, and then he decided to grab this as his hobby horse.
I know.
He seems to be just doing whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, I have the same viewpoint.
Yeah, it seems it just seems a little bit concerning to me. Not because I think at the end of the day that it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back politically for this country, one way or the other. But it's more concerning because it's starting to, that would then incur a trend. Then it would be clear that
you can influence it.
It was already clear with the Facebook thing in 2016, but the belief was that we cleaned that stuff up.
Also, the closer these elections are, the
more
less
influence.
the more influence you have, because if you only have to influence 50,000 people, right, to spread out amongst 3 or 4 states, that can sway the election one way or the other.
Right.
All I know is I've seen so many ads on the streaming services for Kamala. So many of just the political ads.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of Trump ads going on over there.
No, there's a lot. I've only been getting Trump ads.
YouTube only seen the Kamala ads.
Yeah, I mean that probably speaks to
I have YouTube Premium. I don't know. I don't get ads.
that probably speaks to how you curate your content, because I'm like Conrad. If you're talking about my X timeline, it's 80+%.
Oh, I don't
my
even see
YouTube
pro,
as well.
right?
Everything is
the For You.
I don't look at any of that. That place scares me. I only look at following. I'm not looking at For You. For You's got too much stuff on there.
It's interesting.
But when you exit the app and you go back in the app, it takes you right back to For You.
Swipe the following.
I swipe. I do.
What were you gonna say, Barber?
Interesting is the wrong word. That's far too generous. It's a cesspool. It's a complete cesspool.
It really is.
It is a cesspool. I say it's interesting though because I don't know that I would actively seek out to expose myself to controversial opinions different than my own. And another thing that I find to be interesting about it is that I'll fall victim to very clear rage bait, and even worse, just misreported things as facts. I'll find myself reading something that, if having been reported correctly, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash at, but because it was reported with a slant, I take a huge issue one way or the other. I take a big stance on it one way or the other, and oftentimes I find myself aligning with the side that I naturally wouldn't. And it's because of the slant and the rhetoric and the way it's being framed. And it's oh yeah, of course, this is ridiculous. That person just
gotcha.
Followed an old lady and did something bad to her or something you know what I mean? And it gets skewed in this messaging of one anecdotal incident represents the greater problem at large. And I could see how it becomes a national conversation. People are a little bit too lazy to kind of do any critical thinking, and this is just what they consume in their For You is their swipe.
My true issue is, how the fuck is this what you think of me? That when I go to For You, that I want to read this. The AI is just really messed up. This is not for me.
Well, it's based off of who you follow.
Yeah.
But I think this brings us all the way back to what we were talking about last week when you were on, and a lot of what I'm talking about is being shared by people that I follow, right? Where, and to be fair, a lot of it's about things that I'm not educated on, so it makes it easier to sway me. When you're talking about Israel-Palestine, and DNEG shares a big, anti. I'm not even sure which side he falls on, but yeah, but it's very anti-Palestine or whatever. It's very easy to fall down that trap of oh my God, this is egregious. This person has no arm, and You know, like look at what they're doing to.
It works both ways, right?
Yeah, you just get a bunch of one-sided stories.
It does cut both ways, but if you only get to see one side of it, then it's very easy to be manipulated, I think.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of research to just like find somewhere where there's combined stories. I don't know. It's weird.
And ultimately, it's not fun. It's not fun to do the research. Like it's not. It doesn't get the. It doesn't get the heart pumping. It doesn't get the endorphins flowing, serotonin, dopamine. Right.
It also just comes back to like, is this source like valid?
That's also the other part that you always have to worry about, like finding valid sources, because like this is all. It's kind of hard to be. Like to find the truth and stuff like this.
Bro, I saw some shit the other day where there was an octopus on a boat and it turned out to be fucking AI. I can't believe my own eyes anymore.
Yeah, there's like this weird thing now where it's like in my algorithm where like they're just showing like the sea and sea monsters coming up.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, what is this? Yeah. Like, this is not real. You're trying to convince me this is real because I know it's not.
It didn't take much convincing for me.
The tortoise versus the sea monsters is the new lore that we need on the podcast.
I was like, man, that's a big fucking octopus. No, I saw something.
Did you see the giraffe? There was like this giraffe that was getting rescued. It was on like a cliff, and it was so clear that it was AI. Like this was like the giraffe was like the biggest giraffe you ever seen in your entire life.
Sure.
And then people like in the comments are like, oh my god, that's so great they did that, and say they're like, oh please, like how are people falling for this? But those might just be bots too to like reiterate.
But at some point, it might not look like AI anymore.
That's the thing. The octopus did not look like AI.
We're getting very, very close.
This is good. It makes you want to not use social media. It makes you want to lift weights, go to the gym, stay off everything. You know,
if it wasn't for a community comment, I would not have known it was
Michael
AI.
Rocco's so sharp for building that farm, man.
He knows. There it is. Look at this.
The shock emojis.
Would you think this is real?
Yeah, I would have bought.
I mean, come on, man.
All right, come on.
Look how big that giraffe is.
I mean,
I don't know how fucking big a giraffe is.
Okay, not that.
I mean, to scale, that seems like it could be reasonable.
The issue isn't the size of the giraffe; it's how fast it moved up the crane.
Whatever. I don't see anything wrong with this.
It's a time-lapse video.
Now we're gonna start seeing real pictures of fucking Nessie, and I'm just gonna believe all that too.
The giraffe.
I know.
I saw a tweet that Liv put out today, and it really struck a chord with me. I'm sure this will resonate with you a bit, Barber, because it kind of falls in line with this. One of the main reasons why I don't care to do my own due diligence with a lot of these things that I consume is because I don't think I can contribute to solving the problem in any capacity. I can't end the crisis between Israel and Palestine. Like, I don't think I have any impact there.
We're waiting on bated breath for the Berkey 11 tweet.
Right. Like, I respect the fuck out of Bonomo trying to educate people, albeit in a very biased way. Like, it's very clear he took a side. It would be nice to see a more neutral source that's able to kind of and if I cared enough, I would go that route, right? Because I've seen Melanie Weisner speak about the other side, and she speaks very eloquently. They both could sway me very heavily.
Let me ask you a question. Have you found any neutral sources? Or
I don't look.
I'm just saying, like, can you? Sorry, it's more of a.
Are there neutral
yes,
sources?
Yes, exactly. Is there any
somebody
neutral
objectively
sources?
Is analyzing this for sure?
Yeah.
Am I going to dig through the pile to find it? Absolutely not, because I don't think I can contribute to the problem. And what Liv tweeted today, which I thought resonates in this discussion, was something along the effect of, can we all just collectively come together and solve our problems? And that seems to me to be what's generally lacking. Like, you get a guy like Elon, who is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime or once-in-a-generation genius, and he wants to be a lone wolf. Right? He wants to act on his own accord. He wants to be the sole possessor of these ideas and bring them to fruition. Why can't we have him and Bezos and Zuck and these other people who, sure, maybe they have different ideologies, but like, there are so many problems that need to be solved that don't have a political slant to them. Mm-hmm. That these big-brained individuals.
Unfortunately, everything has become politicized nowadays, so it's tough.
Yeah,
I'd argue I think it's game theory. I think it comes down to game theory. Coordination problems are incredibly hard to solve. Like, historically, Liv might have even been saying it tongue in cheek because she knows more than almost anyone how difficult coordination problems are. I mean, I think to come up with like a good poker analogy, usually at least once a summer, going back 10 plus years, poker players talk about they don't like how they're being treated by the operators, and poker players should form a union and should start boycotting specific events. And every year I smile and I say good luck with that. What will inevitably happen is the boycott will be organized. a bunch of good players will remove themselves from the player pool, which will then entice a good player to hop back in, which will then, once you see one person do it, why were you going to, you'll be a scab too. Why keep this boycott going? And it falls apart. And so that's why like coordination problems are so hard without some sort of commitment. But I think establishing those commitments beforehand and making them be binding is just impossibly hard. So, I mean, I think it's like a pipe dream to say, like, it's like wishing for world peace. It's okay, that's great, but how are we actually going to?
I mean,
make
people
that happen?
Had that issue or thought that might happen with the GG boycott for high stakes. They got it done in time, but the fear was that the pool gets so good.
I think that example is a little bit different, though. Echoing Andrew's point in the sense that pool is so small, it's actually able to be coordinated. It's not unionizing all of poker. Right. And yeah, you're right. We get this brought to us all the time where it's like somebody acts in poor form in the space and the cry or the rally cry behind it is, okay, let's all boycott
like
that.
making rake too high
Right.
or something.
And to be fair, I think that you as an economist would agree with this as well. Is like we always encourage people to speak with their wallets. Right. But that's really hard to do if you don't coordinate it because the incentives kind of disalign a bit. And I wonder, kind of bringing this full circle back to what we spent a lot of last week on, what's your take with like how the market particularly should be reacting to the HCL thing where, one of its co-owners gets found out to be a bit predatory when it comes to young, attractive women. They made a public statement and they removed him from ownership, but is that enough? Is there a statement that the community at large could make either by speaking with their wallets or, holding them to a higher standard and demanding more?
I mean, I think that as much as you would like to see coordinated efforts, I think that the way that change happens is from individual actors deciding what's good for them. And then you hope that enough people come to the same conclusions that it has an impact.
Right.
But it's hard to like rally your friends together and like, hey, can we all decide we're not going to support this particular business? I think and this does relate to how you approach social media or information acquisition. Like you have to do it selfishly and you have to do it for reasons that are important to you. And so like either the truth matters to you or it doesn't. And you can, try to dress that up however you want. But like ultimately many people, myself included at times, are making decisions at the margin that truth doesn't matter or the business ethics doesn't matter.
Right.
And so, I think that trying to bring that level of self-awareness that, when it comes to Israel-Palestine, because that is such a tough one. I mean, that might be the toughest issue I'll ever have to deal with in terms of evaluating it. I mean, at the end of the day, after, I don't know, tens of hours, maybe I've eclipsed hundreds of hours, trying to judge that. I don't know if I've gotten any closer than it's terrible. It's terrible, and I wish it could go away, but it can't for a variety of reasons.
And do you think that this is just a personal question too, but do you think that is a good use of your time trying to evaluate what that whole situation is and educate yourself on it?
For whatever reason, I am wired to want to find things out. And I think that wiring is what, leads people like us to obsess about a game and make it our livelihood. But it doesn't stop at poker. We're both interested in, longevity, fitness, and nutrition. And there's gold at the end of that rainbow. And there is with poker. But I think there's also, I think you can find a framing where it's worth learning shit about the world.
Yeah, that's probably where I find a bit of the struggle. Like, to me, it's just abundantly clear why it's worth digging in and doing a deep dive on nutrition or on sauna usage or any other sort of optimization, because it's solving a problem that directly impacts me. And I know that's a very selfish point of view, but I think I subscribe pretty deeply to the philosophy of kind of like the announcement on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on before you help others. It's almost the more empathetic thing to do. Like if you solve your own local problems efficiently and more frequently than expected, that then in turn will allow you to start to do so at scale and help others. You know what I mean? That then will allow you to put their oxygen masks on them. Whereas if you just run around attempting to put the mask on other people, you die.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to save yourself before you save the world. I think that definitely resonates with me. I got that order messed up for a few years. But I do think that an important part of saving yourself is being able to discern truth from fiction.
Yeah.
And once you are able to do that well, I think life becomes easier. You become credible. People are going to value your opinion. A note that I had made to talk about last week that I didn't get to was no one can be an expert on everything. So it's really important that you find your oracles, that you find your people that you trust. And there's value in being a person that can be trusted. Like if you were to call me tomorrow and say, what's your opinion on X? And I gave you my opinion, I would expect you to like give it some positive weight because, you know, I've earned that credibility, hopefully. And I think being one of those people, if we could have a world full of more people who were credible, it just like the poker world works so much better when, you know, you can trust people to lend to or to borrow from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy.
That's kind of what makes like Huberman so big in the exercise, like fitness space, right? Like he just has so much stuff time and time again where it's like if he says it, like you believe it to be true.
Right. And the counter to that is that the bigger his voice becomes and the more he's discerned as being an expert, the more people try to find his fatal flaw and
give him a bunch of money
basically stress test his claims, which is good. It's both good and bad, right? It's great when it's done in good faith. So people trying to stress test his claims is an incredible resource to everybody else involved because now you find out one way or another if it's a qualified source. The problem is with the dynamic of social media these days, it's not really incentivizing good faith testing, right? What's actually being incentivized is somebody chopping his legs out from underneath him in order to replace him in the hierarchy, right? So a lot of people, you'll see a lot of back and forths where they'll basically say like, oh, he's a neuroscientist. He's not credible when talking about sleep.
But I am, and here's what I'm
a sleep study doctor, and my voice is more credible than his. And here are all the ways that I'm going to discredit Huberman so that you never listen to him as a source anymore. And oh, by the way, I'm going to start talking about nutrition and fitness and all these other things too.
Which is kind of interesting and weird because Huberman will also have guests like experts of those fields.
Correct, yeah.
Like for his podcast, like I think his name's like Matt Walker, who's like a big sleep guy, and like he'll defer to him for these topics, and he's not the one that's talking about the sleep stuff. He's talking from what Matt Walker had to say about the sleep stuff.
I think that there's I think we're still having a lot of fallout from the Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan cycle where nobody tested anyone's claims, and a lot of snake oil salesmen flew under the radar and passed as being heavy experts. Right? It just became a thing where their platforms were so qualified that if you made it to the Rogan podcast, you were vetted and you were an expert in the field. And it became abundantly clear after the fact he wasn't vetting anybody.
Yeah.
Right? He was just bringing people on that he liked and wanted to have a casual conversation with, and then would qualify them as experts in the process.
And that's where the issue lies.
Yeah. So there was a big overcorrection where now it actually became a social media content strategy to just be a channel or a source that was outing or snopesing all of these claims. Yeah, doing all the fact checking of all these claims. And it became so much in the minutia. You know, a lot of these things, especially on the Huberman side of things, when he's talking about health and fitness and all this other stuff, you're talking about a lot like epidemiology studies that are impossible to discern like their reliability, right? Like again, Barber, you could speak more to this than me. You're much more into the data science realm, but a lot of these studies are done in a way where the data isn't super qualified. If you look at like some of the vegan versus meat eater studies, what you ultimately find is like one really poor lifestyle that falls into the meat eater category because most everybody eats meat. So you just cherry pick people, or sorry, you don't cherry pick people. You just take a general populace and you get that general sample, and it's like the American diet type of people. And then you get this well curated sample of vegans who have made a conscious effort to be very health conscious, and now work out, don't smoke, don't drink, eat, they don't overeat. They eat a very restricted amount of calories and everything else. And you're never really actually testing the merits of the food consumption, right? You're actually testing the population that you're pulling the data from. That tends to be the case of most epidemiology studies where you can't really drill down on the variable nature of the data. And I think what that ultimately leads to is a lot of low-hanging fruit for people who want to disqualify things.
Yeah, it's crazy hard to do like causal inference to determine cause and effect. Epidemiology studies are a classic example where you're never going to, like, the ideal would be the RCT, the randomized controlled trial, where you have like a control group, you have a treatment group. They're the same. You like make sure they're balanced on all these demographic variables, age, race, sex, what have you, education, and then you give like one treatment to the treatment group, and then you see what happens to their outcomes, and you just are able to compare those outcomes, and any differences have to be due to the treatment because you've controlled for everything else. Those are so hard to run in the real world with regard to any policy, with regard to any, long-term things. We love sauna. Like sauna is a tricky one to do because you can't trace people 20, 30 years ahead. And so you try to do these observational studies, these epidemiological observational studies, where you look at these groups of people and you try to control for their differences, but usually you do a shitty job. Because for all the things you can observe, there's a million things you can't. I think you captured some of the stuff about like vegan versus carnivore, a classic one where like it's very hard to get this right because there's so many things that are correlated with choice of diet. Vegans are definitely making a conscious choice to be healthier people. So it doesn't surprise me that you're going to see like better health outcomes in a variety of studies. So yeah, ultimately, like, this does demand a lot of the person who is trying to understand this stuff because there's loads of nuance. And again, it's like, it's not fun. It's not sexy to get into the weeds on this stuff. People want black and white answers. And when they don't get them, they turn to something else.
And they want drama that gives them the answer that they want to see.
I was going to say, I think they force black and white answers, right? Mm-hmm. So they look for the source that will say, sauna is good. Yeah. And here's a list of reasons why, and here's 10 studies that back that up. And if you try to come at me, like, you're an asshole. Yeah. I think it like often works in the. I always defer to the vegan non-vegan argument because for better or for worse, people who tend to go the vegan route are so staunchly in the camp of this is right that they tend to not be open-minded to the idea that maybe there's not one simple fix or not one particular way. But this stretches to just about anything that you want to argue with on the internet that does have, again, I think this is where game theory comes into play. There is a solution, right? There's an optimal diet for each and every one of us. Is it uniform? Probably not. Does it exist? Absolutely.
Can we figure it out?
Can we figure it out? That's the question that remains. And whether or not we're even getting closer is debatable. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't really have a quote unquote solver for this. Right. And the studies aren't really moving mountains.
Like the Q 2,000 calories a day for as long as possible, like for as long as time is.
It's a random number. Yeah. It's so random.
But Matt, let's not throw up our hands. Like, well, there's some stuff we know. There's some like, don't eat too much.
Right.
Eat in from the food you do eat, like choose good sources, get good sleep, hydrate yourself adequately, be active. And like you lose so many people just with that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's very fair.
I think this is the classic, let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like, why don't you get your house in order first before you start worrying about perfecting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very true.
I think that's very true, but I also think it's just like human nature, right? Like
to try to hit perfection.
No. To to try to justify not being perfect. I think the exact opposite, right? So the example I was going to give is that I live a pretty regimented life. I feel like my house is relatively in order when it comes to all the things that Andrew just discussed. Do I have cookies sometimes? Of course. But without fail, if I'm snacking on something, if I'm having a cookie, if I have a slice of pizza in a social setting or something of that effect, it's filmed. Always. It's like I'm shamed each and every time that I break any level of discipline or even just like allow myself.
Right. It's like this.
You're friends with Geno and Landon.
Yeah. It's not even just them. It's anybody. If I'm in Bellagio, it happens.
People have this perception of you that you are perfect in your diet. You do everything perfect, and so like when you break there, like, oh, look at Berkey, he's
just
not
like
perfect.
Us, one of us,
Right.
cookie eating, ice cream loving, one of us.
Right. He talks about, oh, you should have this diet and you should do this and you should work out and you do that. But look at him, he's eating a bag of M&Ms.
Right. So there's a million things. There's a million things going on there. In one aspect, it's a means of discrediting the notion of perfect and that it's even worth pursuing.
Yeah.
On another aspect of it, it's a means of leveling the playing field and saying like we're not so different when in fact we actually are. And finally, it's this notion of like, why bother if that's the guy who's putting in all of the max effort and he's still going to do things against his own mantras. Then why the fuck should I care?
Right. Like, somehow, like all of the times that you filmed, like lifting weights doesn't, like, not that it's necessary, but they expect it all to happen. So that you take the day off, if you will. It's like, why would I even try to start if he's busy doing this too?
It's more the framework of the things that are necessary in order to quote unquote get your house in order feel sacrificial. Whereas,
like giving up the cookies most of the time.
Yeah. Lifting the weights most of the time, sleeping most of the time. Like it feels sacrificial to living what people would consider to be a good life. And indulging feels like that's living, baby. You know, live fast, die young. Yeah, like indulge, be hedonistic, like do all the things. But, you know, I think to Barber's point, we lose a lot of people within the framework of truthfully the greatest level of independence that you ever achieve is through discipline. Right? It's through, like, I don't have to think about the things that most people who put a high emphasis on palatability of food and presentation and things of that
You're boring
nature.
because you eat chicken and rice kind of thing.
Sure, but like I also never have to think about my food. Ever. Like I'm never like pacing nervously around the kitchen going, what's today going to be?
You aren't?
No. I mean, sometimes I'm hungry and I want a snack. And like I just choose not to take a snack.
It's chicken and rice or pancakes. Get with it.
But like it's just more so like it's a dedication to things that help you as a human enjoy all of that other stuff, right? It frees you up for all the things that are being highlighted. The vast majority of people that are just like, man, you eat boring, you don't like this, you don't like that, whatever the case may be, also aren't doing those things. They're not eating at 5-star restaurants. They're not traveling the world. They're not doing any of these things. They just put all those things on a pedestal and say, if I were in your shoes and had all of the things that you have available to you, those are the things that I would put a high priority on. It's like, well, guess what? I'm doing all of those things. I'm eating at 5-star restaurants. I'm traveling the world. I'm doing all. It's just not the only thing that I'm doing.
And ironically, they don't get to the point you're at because they do all those things in the moment.
Correct. When given one single opportunity to do it, they take it.
Like,
and then
you keep taking that opportunity that you don't actually build towards anything important.
Yeah. It feels.
Does this bother you? Does it bother you when someone films you having a cookie? Because it seems like you
endlessly.
Like it's a little upsetting.
Endlessly.
Why do you let it bother you?
So it doesn't bother me in the sense that.
I love that this turned into a therapy session. This is great.
Well, it doesn't bother me in the sense that like
good conversation should be a therapy session.
Of course.
It doesn't bother me in the sense that like it's on record. It bothers me in the sense that it's I know that it's being done as a gotcha. Nobody wants to be gotcha'd.
Right.
Even if it doesn't gotcha myself, right? Like even if I don't give it any credence, someone will.
It's like there he goes again on his pedestal.
I think you shouldn't indulge bad faith criticisms, and these are all bad faith criticisms.
Yeah. What happens when it? But like a lot of times it's from my friends.
How many cookies you got to get recorded until you start taking effect?
Like it's a way my friends trolling me. Yeah, which is fine. And I don't care. It's just like the consistency, man. I mean, like I won't go to group functions a lot of the time because I know people are there that will like film me eating a cookie.
I mean, that's pathological, I think. I don't know. I mean, but I got to say, you have a great response in the chamber that you could fire any time, which is, I earned this shit. You did not.
Ooh, yeah.
Imagine saying that to me.
I'll tell you off air why I can't do that, but like you're right, obviously. I mean, the hypocrisy of like what's taking place here is like evident to everybody else. It's just, and maybe that's ultimately the underlying issue is that like I want to shake the people doing it and being like, why are you choosing what you're choosing? And then shaming me for choosing what I'm choosing. You know what I mean? It's like we're on two totally separate lifestyle paths.
It's a distraction away from them. I mean,
it just makes them feel better that way.
Yeah, exactly.
They're using you as a way to feel better about themselves. So being sad that they don't have the discipline and they eat the cookie every day.
Yes, precisely. Yeah. Which I think, again, I think all this comes back to like problem solving. Like we started the conversation this way, we can end it this way. But like for me particularly, it's one of my greatest interests in life. And I find it to be very frustrating and problematic when somebody has a problem staring themselves in the face that everyone around them can see. They choose to ignore it and then deflect off of it by trying to create a problem for you. Right? It's like that to me is like that's like white knuckling anger. You know, it just
Arthur
like
Fist.
Because I bite, because I like to help and I like to solve, right? So it's like I kind of bite where it's like, all right, let's explore this a little bit. Let's go down this path of like what you could do to get a little bit more
Time
towards
for your
the center.
therapy session.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, man, at the end of the day, like just eat the fucking cookie, have a good time, go home and regret it, and then start all over again the next day.
Well, that's what they do, and that's why they do it. That's why they record you, because you don't do that every day.
Right.
I mean, I'm low key, to use the language of the kids. I'm low key obsessed with obesity and trying to solve this obesity crisis. And I have a past due report for Bill Perkins that he generously offered to fund my research into this topic. And it's just so startling how bad it has gotten every single year. I mean, the obesity rate is just climbing. I think maybe within the next couple of years, 50% of the U.S. is supposed to be obese, 70% is overweight or obese. We have this massive problem staring us in the face, and like no one really wants to talk about it in good faith. Like there's some hand waving going on, but I mean, honestly, like no one goes up to no one said this to me when I was obese. Like no one goes up to their obese friends and says like, you got to get this under control, man. Like this is really, really bad.
Why do we always end on the conversation that like I could spend an hour on?
Save it for tomorrow.
It's a teaser. It's a teaser.
Yeah.
For next
week.
It is
a teaser. We ended the last one the same way. I really do still want to get into.
Let's just always end on a teaser with Barber, and then people will be happy to come back.
I really do want to talk about GLP-1 antagonists again, like in further depth. I actually I know a friend who's an athlete who's been on it, and she lost a ton of weight. But lost a ton of muscle alongside of it, and I'm kind of curious to hear what your research has brought with those regards. But you know, again, I'll leave this as a question rather than opening the can of worms now. But isn't it just obvious that the obesity rate is directly correlated to the way that food is subsidized in this country? Like the government has its hands in keeping us unhealthy with the food that gets pumped out in mass.
I mean, in part, I mean, I think that we live in a very obesogenic environment. I think that we've evolved to want to hold on to fat for fear of, having experiencing famine. And I think some of us are just genetically predisposed to hold on to fat. And it's never been easier to get tons and tons of calories, hyper palatable food. The government could definitely do things like at the margin to make a difference, soda taxes or banning high fructose corn syrup or something like that. But like ultimately it's a crisis of lack of discipline. And I think that we have some solutions to hack this. I think the GLP-1 agonists are one of those hacks. Like basically it gives you discipline with regard to food. But I wish that I had a government that wanted to prioritize this in the way that like JFK did, shortly before he was assassinated. He wanted to make like the presidential council, physical fitness, a big thing, and have this be a bigger part of schools. And I think we missed that boat, and it was probably the perfect time to do so.
I'm going to do a little research between.
Really get on board with.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little more research between now and the next time we talk, but I'm pretty sure the cost per gram of sugar consumed compared to the cost per gram of protein consumed is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4 or 5 to 1.
That's right.
I'm kind of just like spitballing, but that's a big problem. If the cost of a 25 gram protein shake is 5 to 10x the cost of a 12 ounce soda, it's going to be really difficult to onboard people.
When it comes to the Barber stance of like sleep better, eat less, do more, like covering those boxes, how much do you think the obesity crisis changes?
I think food
dramatically. I mean, some of this stuff, like, it takes time to correct. My neighbor is a doctor who was in Mississippi, and he's like, you wouldn't believe the number of 500-pound people I saw on a daily basis. And that takes time to fix itself.
Yeah,
but I think if you get to a good point and then people adopt those habits, then I think that you avoid it altogether. But I mean, like, we just have a shortage of discipline, and I think figuring out how to solve that, everything's downstream of discipline. It's
almost like at some point there's like a drop off. I guess we can call it like the drop off of hopelessness, where like you reach a certain weight and you're like, it's over.
Yeah, I again, we could talk about this forever. There's a lot of economics involved as well. It's easy for us where we can just get high quality foods pretty readily. Not necessarily true for everybody. I grew up eating ramen, and I was lucky to have that. But yeah, another time. Mm-hmm. We gotta leave a little meat on the bone, Barber. We're gonna make you a routine thing here, especially on these days where you saved the show.
We appreciate that.
Looking forward to it.
All right, man. Thank you for joining us. I'll hit you up offline. We can talk a little bit more. Right. But looking forward to having you back. That's going to do it for us today.
Andrew.
Thank you, buddy. That's going to do it for us today. Don't forget, tomorrow is the final clue for our scavenger hunt to give away the NAPT Gold Pass. That's a 10K package, including a $5,300 buy-in to the NAPT main event at Resorts World. First 4 clues have been posted at onlyfriends_pod. You can find them all there. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about poly market, about the nutrition and obesity crisis that the country faces. And as Andrew Barber is a guest, hope you guys enjoyed that. We're going to be back tomorrow evening. I have a starting seat at Bellagio, so we're going to be here at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Matt Hunt's going to join us for a strat chat. We're going to go over a few of the hands from the recent Triton Cash series where they were playing progressive stand-up, as well as a few of the old hands from the big game, and we're going to see how being a loose cannon potentially adjusts strategy there. We'll also be giving away that final clue for the NAPT Gold Package, so be sure to stay tuned. We'll see you guys all then.
Peace.
Peace.